So we'd like to ask our brother Red to come forward and speak to us on the questions Jesus asked. Brother Red?
What a difference a full stop makes. I'll let you think about that. So, I was given one instruction: nothing controversial. Having listened to my other speakers, it seems I'm the only one. But there's some things that have to be said, don't they? Football, really? Really?
Kansas City Chiefs. Yeah. There you go. There you go.
I mean, you Americans, you could sell sand to the Saudis. I took my son a few years ago to the Super Bowl, and it was a long, long way to go. And we had 1 hour of play and 2 hours of commercials. I thought that's value for money. But fortunately, we went into overtime and I got another hour of commercials. So
right, exactly.
we did all right. So I'm not going to be controversial. I'm not going to talk about that. Oh, sorry, I thought I deleted that one. We'll get to our subject. Now, I did notice that that all the other speakers had apparently been asked to say a little bit about themselves. No one said that to me. But it's not going to stop me, is it? Who is Red? Well, Richard gave me the idea for this, but I'm now feeling quite bad because he's ill. And I'm thinking, can I say what I'm about to say? But then I go, he's a Welshman. So this is I didn't put myself through a test. This is how I look at myself, with a little bit of feedback that I might listen to occasionally. But ultimately, I am an unbelievable optimist. I drive my family nuts with optimism. Absolutely, they can't bear it. And you all might be thinking, well, optimism's good, isn't it? Until you find out your pilot on your aircraft is an optimist, or your financial advisor is a terrific optimist. And you go, okay, I guess all characteristics have a few ups or downs. But did you notice how Richard, the other day, when he had his list, how he slipped in there a romantic at the bottom? And I looked around and I saw all the sisters in the room go, oh yeah, he's a hopeless romantic. What a lovely guy that Richard is. Slipped it right in at the bottom so we wouldn't notice. So, you know, I'm not going to go there. I'm not going to go there because I don't need to do that. I don't need to do that. But in reality, and seriously, the list of those things, an optimist, random, a big picture person, all those things, they really tell you very little about me, don't they? I mean, you wouldn't agree to marry me on the basis of a list like that. And, you know, and it's quite similar really to the list that we might have had with Jesus. With the list that you might have, you know, maybe he was a carpenter like his dad, but he was certainly a drifter. He was poor, he was intelligent. Many said he had poor choice in friends. But he was amazing at debating, wasn't he? He could really leave you just not knowing what you'd asked him and what happened in the conversation. But he also had a great sense of humour, and he could be direct. But he was from the north, and he was radical. But really, that tells us nothing either, does it, about Jesus? These are a few things that can incorporate many, many people. And the scribes and Pharisees really wanted to know who he was. But actually, more than wanting to know who he was, they wanted for everyone to see who they thought he was. They wanted to reveal him to the people round about because they couldn't quite believe all the people that seemed to be following this man Jesus of a dubious background and a dubious family. And so they started with an approach. We'll ask questions. We'll ask questions about him, and we'll get to the bottom of this, and we'll ask him in public places, so he's going to have to answer in front of people. And we'll be able to demonstrate he is who we think he is. He's irreverent. He doesn't follow any of our traditions. He doesn't love his God. We'll prove he's a tax evader. This is unqualified to be leading people and to be a rabbi. In fact, he's a revolutionary, and he's going to bring about problems on us. And so they set about, didn't they, the greatest minds of Israel to show up Jesus for who they thought he was. And they did. They showed everyone exactly who he was through the questions that they asked. But it wasn't any of those things, was it? In the box there. And the people kept falling more and more in love with him and with the gospel message that he was bringing to them. We can learn a lot about someone by the questions that they ask. But isn't it also true that we can learn a lot more from the answers that they give? Because something happens to a question when it comes in through this hearing aid, then into my ear, rattles about, there's something still there. And the emotions go through, and then there's something else happens, and then something comes out of my mouth. And we could have spent a lot of time looking at different ways that we think, both cognitively or not, but not really helpful within this, because it's enough for us to know that just something happens when it comes into us, and a bit of us comes out with it. And it's evident to other people, and it's evident to ourselves, and it's evident to our Father, which is in heaven. And, you know, the questions that Jesus asked certainly revealed a lot, didn't they? He used to like using questions to people to make them think about what it was that he was doing in a different way. He wanted them to see that when we get asked a question and then when the answer comes from us, there'll be a little marker in there, a little chemical marker which will show that we have a certain bias about certain things. There'll be another little marker there for those that can read it, which will say about the motives, the things that drives us and moves us forward. In the way that we answer the question, often we will demonstrate whether we are a patient or whether we are not a patient person. Whether we naturally have kindness in us or we have to work for kindness or we don't really care about kindness. when it comes back out, all those markers are on the answer that we give. And Jesus knew that. And, so he would ask a lot of questions. I mean, this is just a list of the questions that he asked about the Sabbath. And, Jesus, we have on record, and we know from John that, that not enough books could contain all the things that Jesus did and said. But just in what we have over 300 questions that Jesus asked. And, often they're on set topics here. But we know Jesus, often with his questions, just wanted people to stop and realize that they were inconsistent or they weren't doing what they thought they were doing. And, here Jesus says, this is almost my favorite question that he asks, because I go, this doesn't sound like it's from any biblical scholar at all. This is the sort of question that you might ask a 5-year-old at school. Is it lawful to do good on the Sabbath or to do evil? I mean, you've got the cleverest people, the most read people that could quote to you from any scriptural Bible. Is that your question, Jesus? A 5-year-old could come up with a question like that. What are you trying to do with it? And then it hits, and the layer beyond it hits, and people begin to realize, okay, what is it we're actually doing? What is it we're actually talking about? And I don't think they actually gave him an answer here, did they? They just got angry with him in this. But, Jesus, time and time again with his questions, he just tries to shine a little bit of light on human nature, on people. So, if nothing else, they have an opportunity to themselves to see what it is that they're actually doing compared with what they think they are doing. And it's not a surprise, is it, that the questions of Jesus should shine a light on anything. He was, after all, the light of the world. It was one of the main things that he did that when he came here. Early on in John's Gospel, he reveals that to us. I'm the light of the world. He's come to shine a light in those dark places. And Ephesians 5 picks up a similar theme to that, reminding us that it's out of the darkness that we've come from. For you were once darkness, but now you are light in the Lord, because he is light. Live as children of the light, children of Christ, for the fruit of light consists of all goodness, righteousness, and truth. The questions that Jesus asked were so often unexpected. It was Christian that had that account of the man being healed at the pools. And Jesus saying to him, do you want to be healed? What a mad question. I'm sure all the people around him were not expecting that to be the question of Jesus. And they were often so deep. Can you be baptized with the baptism with which I am baptized? That's quite heavy. Jesus' questions shine a light on us, on who we are. And they often take us to the most uncomfortable places if we choose to answer them. They challenge us. They shake us up. And often we do not want to answer them, at least at that time, in that passion. We want to leave them behind. But if we don't, it leaves us in the dark. I'm going to give you an opportunity to, you've been working really hard, you've had lots of sessions, to engage a little bit in a question now. And this question might have a little bit of light, which might reveal a little bit to you about yourself. But I'm going to put you can speak to the person next to you, you can even maybe just three of you, whatever works in your little group. You might also learn a little bit about the person next to you or one on. No judgment here, everyone, okay? And this question was actually one that my son phoned me literally just before we went away. He said, Dad, can I just bounce something off you? And I'm a bit worried because normally he phones his mom. From the age of about 7, I've been the idiot of the household. So I'm not qualified to answer any questions generally. So he generally asks his mom. But he said, my director's just come to me, and they know I won't work on any military contracts that I do at work. He's in financial restructuring, so he kind of doesn't directly work in manufacturing or anything like that, but they're often dealing with those types of companies. He said, the director's come to me and said, we've got a paint company. And part of the work that the paint company do, and they do all sorts of general work, part of what they do is put a protective paint on missiles, which are used. And the director knew that I might not be comfortable with that, so he's come and asked me, should I work on that? Or would I be willing to work on that? I said, what do you think, Dad? So we bounced it for about 20 minutes on the phone, and you know, I didn't ask him where he was going to go with it. He'll choose to tell me if he wants to tell me what he ended up doing with it. But just that process of asking the question, you start to unravel other things. So I'm going to ask you 2 questions now. You've got very little time. I'm going to give you about 5 minutes to actually work through them with your partners. So number 1 is, I'm going to ask you, would you work on that contract? Share how you think about that, how you would approach that question, how you would break it down for you. And then I'm going to ask you, how do you think about how much diligence or your approach to putting money in investments, in trust funds which deal with widespread investments? How do you think about that, other than how good the return is? So how do you think about that? How, from your Christian point of view, with Jesus shining the light on the question, do you think about, right, you've got 5 minutes, go, go, go. Turn around, turn to the person next to you. You can move around if you want.
The second question is the same as the first.
Okay.
It is the same question.
Is that what you've decided?
It is the same question.
Is it?
You just have different parameters around the question.
There's no right or wrong answer, but I'm certain that other people might not agree. But that doesn't mean your answer's wrong.
Might be worth repeating what the second question is because
Okay. Yeah, so the second question was how you think about your investments in trusts and what diligence you might do or what trusts you might not invest in or what parameters you might put around those trusts, or whether you don't see the need for it and you'll happily invest in anything. You've only got 1 minute, by the way. Right, I'm going to. Please feel free to continue afterwards with those questions, and actually, I'm going to have some more questions for you later. So don't worry about that. So I don't know whether that was easy, whether that was difficult. I don't know whether that was uncomfortable or comfortable. I don't know whether you would answer it differently if you were on your own and you didn't have to say it out loud to someone else. I don't know whether it would be different if no one else knew other than you and God. Because we can be like that, can't we? But ultimately, there are certainly wrong answers, but they're not always one right answer, and very often there is seldom one right answer. The question might be the constant, but the individual, the time, the circumstances are the variables often that play out. Is Florida the right place to live? I always loved and admired Paul, how he was able to set a crowd against itself. Such a skill, it's wonderful. You will think about that differently. You'll make different decisions, and and at different times in your life, there'll be a different answer. And lots of questions that Jesus asked were like that, but they were seldom as surface or as unimportant as where we actually live. His questions went right down to the marrow, didn't they? If you were willing to take hold of them. One of our biggest problems is, though, that we We're very good at putting up barriers, at ignoring doing something that we need to do. You know, I am the world's greatest procrastinator. Well, I was until I had a son. And in fact, we bought all the kids' mugs when they were young, and they had their names on it, but his name on his mug was called the Procrastinator. It was actually on there. But he got that from someone. And one of the things that we can do when it comes to facing and looking at things honestly and asking the questions that we should be asking is that we think we already know the answer. Or there's an answer that we like and we don't want to have the risk that that answer might not be right. And actually sometimes we're pretty convinced that answer is not right, but if we don't think about it, we can stick with the answer. You probably, like me, grew up in the truth. And Brother Jeff, where are you? Thank you. Thank you for setting that lion free this week. You know, it really doesn't need anyone to look after it. And unfortunately, in Europe, we don't have lions. And really, for me, the better analogy is setting the bulls. And it's actually next week. This is going to be happening in Spain. It'll happen all next week for a whole week. And each year, somebody dies. Spanish don't seem to mind about that. Lots of injuries around it, but I love this picture. This is the truth. And this is what truth should do. Truth should be taking a few injuries. It should be, it should be taking its toll on us because, let's face it, if it is the truth, it's a powerful thing and it's got sharp teeth and it is no respecter of persons. So when we think about that, how do we manage that in our mind? How do we deal with it? Well, I end up always having to go, and the little thing I do, I go, well, what are some of the characters? And this is no way, this isn't exhaustive. And actually, you spend a bit of time thinking about this, you will keep adding to this list. But this is picking up quite a few of the fundamental things. Look, what are the characters? If I love the truth, if the truth is important to me, if it's something that I really want, if it's something that I'm basing my life on, then what are the characteristics that demonstrate that? You know, it's a bit like saying, well, I'd love to lose weight. You know, it's really important to me to lose weight. And you'll start looking at what I'm eating at the time. You know, the beer I've got. Sorry, don't drink beer. The wine. You start, how much exercise? Well, I'm thinking about it, tomorrow. Gotta go. You start to look and you go, you don't really want to lose weight. You want to lose weight, but you don't really want to lose weight, do you? And the truth, like anything in us, this is where questions start to begin. You go, oh, these are uncomfortable questions, and they get more uncomfortable as I start to go down. But these are the barriers that stop us engaging Jesus in his dialogue to us. The first one, diligence, well, I can tell you, I've grown up a Christadelphian. They read their Bibles. We read our Bibles. And they love study. And that is right. That is how it should be. How else are we going to learn about God? How else are we going to hear the questions that Jesus has? But don't let us be fooled that's a one-way ticket to the truth. And that's all that's needed. You study the scriptures diligently because you think in them you have eternal life. That's what Jesus said to the scribes and the Pharisees. And yet you reject me and they reveal me. But if this is important to us, we've got to give it time and space, haven't we? And that just isn't just reading. It's quiet moments, thinking it through in our own context. And give those thoughts space to work out and to knock them about. That's why son said, can I knock this about with you? I love that analogy. I say something and he goes, yeah, but what about this? Yeah, but I go, yeah, but what about that? You've got to knock it about. You have to do that also in your own head. And it requires us to be vulnerable, doesn't it? Because these things are ingrained. They are important to us. They carry weight. We've invested in them. We've got to be vulnerable. And that is not natural. And so part of that process is become more self-aware, isn't it? What are my biases? Why do I get angry when that's said? Why do all those things seem to go on? Why can't I have a relationship with those people? Why does it always turn out into an argument when I say that? Why? We have to become self-aware. If you don't think you have any biases, you're the only one. Because the rest of us do. Well done. And sometimes that means we've got to be willing to pay the price of what we find. A king is established through many counselors, the wise man told us. If you think you know it all and you are the only voice that you need to hear, even Solomon didn't think that. And then we need to test it. That's what Jesus' questions did. They were relentless. Is that chair in IKEA? I don't know whether they do it over here. You go into the door at IKEA and there's one of their chairs there. And there's this hammer or something just hitting it like this, and a counter at the top going 23,559. It's just pounding it. I do sometimes wonder, have they changed the chair? Is it still the original one? They swap them out? These are the characteristics. If the truth is important to us, and it should be important to us, because the truth is also a fruit. It is the fruit of the light. So the truth is important to us. And so we need to work out, well, are those characteristics, are they in what I do and how I approach and how I connect with God? And we know what the risk is if we don't. And it upsets me so much. That picture on the left, I tell you, it carries so much emotion in my head. It's a picture that has kept coming back to me for years and years. It's just a house of cards, I know. But the amount of times that these flimsy little cards have been referred to from the platform as essential for salvation. And then someone at some point in their life is going, I just can't accept that. That is just, Scripture doesn't support it at all. And that one card comes out and seemingly you go, okay, just adjust. And you've seen it. Maybe you've seen it with people that you really, really love. That falls flat. And in reality, the card was only in there because of someone's pride and not because God had put it there. God put that one there, that cornerstone, those apostles, those disciples, the foundations for our faith. And we can kick them as hard as we like. You don't have to worry you're going to break them. A lion's not going to break those. You can't do anything that will belittle or take down Jesus' sacrifice. You can't make it any less than it is. You can kick it as hard as you like. Look at David in the Psalms. Where are you, God? You've left me with no friends in darkness. We have to work through that. And what is the benefit of going through this? I feel like I've just put a picture to you of like, yeah, Jesus' questions are great. We've got to get there. They're going to be painful. They're going to cost you a lot. It's going to be hard. You're going to be challenged. It's the only way. This was the psalm that we had read. I've just taken a few verses from it. David says, "You have searched me, Lord, and you know me. You know when I sit and when I rise. You perceive my thoughts from afar. You discern my outgoing and my lying down, and you're familiar with all of my ways." The scribes and Pharisees asked Jesus questions so they could better reveal who he was to the crowds. Jesus asked the people questions so they could better understand for themselves who they were and who he was. And here we have David saying, "Lord, search me, know me." But this isn't for God's benefit. It isn't like, we bring up, to Jacob, one of his grandkids, that they come up to him and he hasn't seen them for a while and they've grown in that. And he goes, "Oh yes, this is, oh, he's done really well at school," and start explaining all about him. God already knows David. He doesn't have to search him. There's no computer program he's got to suddenly run to understand exactly what's been going. He hasn't got to have a conversation with an angel and just get an update. This is for David, isn't it? These questions are for David. And it comes out because he goes, "That knowledge you have of me, Lord, knowing me, it's such knowledge. It's too wonderful for me." You see, David knew what we don't like to know. David knew that it was important for us to understand ourselves, for us to stand in the light of Jesus and have it shine on us and reveal all those dark, horrid places that we would love to cover up and would love it if no one knew about. David actually knew that would be a wonderful thing to do. He knew how easy we can deceive ourselves, how easy it is for us to lie to ourselves, how easy it is to pretend to people round about us. "How precious to me are your thoughts, my God." Because God, like Jesus, or Jesus like God. Now, when Jesus was in Jerusalem at the Passover feast, many people saw the signs that he was performing and believed in his name. But Jesus would not entrust himself to them. Why? For he knew what was in all people, just like God knew what was in David before he searched him. For he knew what was in every person. You don't need Jesus to take a look at you for Jesus. We need Jesus and God to take a look at us for us. We have to face the things that we don't want to face. And his light, his questions, do that for us. And so it's worth, just going back through those questions. If you get a chance, there's over 300. So you can take one for every day of the year if you want, or you can spread it out. But I suggest to you, if you do it with the view of a prayer, Lord, reveal to me what I don't want to look at. Help me to understand what you want from me and how I can best serve you and how my relationship with you can be built. And so I'll just leave you with the questions that I thought might be worth taking away, just to keep you going. We can start always. You can choose out, do we want to be healed? Do we? Strange question for someone crippled, but maybe we don't think that we are crippled. Maybe go, what do you mean crippled, Lord? Well, what do you mean by that? How am I crippled? The light of Jesus is a scary thing, isn't it, for us? It can reveal so much. Can we be baptized with the baptism with it? What does that mean for us in our day, today? And why are we so anxious? And we can keep digging, can't we? Why don't I hurt when others do? Do you ever ask yourself that? Have you ever been in that situation, you've seen someone else really upset, and you've gone, I'll just go quiet. I'll try and be a little bit invisible because I'm actually not feeling anything at the moment. Why don't we hurt when others hurt? Why do I hold back when others show generosity? Maybe more to that, why don't I lead in the generosity? Why is there always someone else that says, we should help them out really, shouldn't we? Well, we find out that's what's happened. Why did I say that? That's my top one. I'm brilliant at that. The questions Jesus Christ asked Red Peel. Thank you.